Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. I should have gotten this one out sooner, but in a fun twist, this one is coming with a giveaway. The author has offered a lot of audiobooks for people who watch this video and subscribe to my channel, and I am super excited about it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that at the beginning because this review is for the second book in the series, and I don't want to spoil anyone who hasn't listened or read the first one yet. So, this series by Erin Kelly is all about werewolves. It's a werewolf romance. This is a world in which werewolves previously did not exist. There was a virus. They exist now, and the lycanthropy still has some bloodborne pathogens-esque values or facets to it, I guess you could say. So it is a very interesting take on it. The romance is very sweet, and the audiobook narrator, Torian Brackett, is delightful, nice, honey voice. Does some great different voices for each of the characters that I love. I'm actually bummed that I didn't listen to this one wholly through an audiobook because I low-key wanted to see how he would take the British character's voice. But in general, this is a giveaway for 5 separate people, which is a lot for a giveaway, mostly because the first book, Tainted Moonlight, came out 5 years ago this past October, and so the author is giving 5 viewers of this video and subscribers to this channel the first 3 books in the series in audiobook format for free. So you will get Tainted Moonlight, Captured Moonlight, and Infected Moonlight for free. Lovely, lovely audiobooks. And I have heard recently that voice actors, specifically audiobook narrators, are kind of at a very crucial point with a lot of companies wanting to stop using them and instead use the very electronic sounding text-to-speech programs. So this would be a great time to get into audiobooks and help support people who have their livelihoods threatened by companies trying to, make things cheaper and crappier. Honestly, Torian does a fantastic job, and no text-to-speech software would do these books justice the way he does. So, definitely check that out. To enter this giveaway, all you have to do is like this video, subscribe to this channel, and comment down below. The author herself will be picking the winners, so that's not as much on me, but if you enjoy werewolves and free audiobooks, definitely check that out. This giveaway will go until December 1st. So she will be picking the winners in December. And if you are someone that likes to participate in December, you will have some delightful indie books with which to do that. Now, on to the review. So, because this is a sequel in the series, I did not do a lot of research into what it was about, aka reading the synopsis. Mostly because if I like a series, I like to go into the next book in it blind as much as possible. And so I probably didn't actually lose out on a lot not reading the synopsis because I actually read it after the fact. It doesn't actually give you a lot. And there's one big reason for that is that there is a major left turn in this book. Now, the very, very beginning of it, the first give or take 50 pages, deals directly with the fallout of the previous book. In the end of Tainted Moonlight, you see our heroes, Corbin and Sophie, forcibly transformed into their wolf form through this serum. Well, Sophie's forcibly transformed. Corbin basically decides to join his love and willingly transforms himself. Although still through the use of the serum, and the serum has a bunch of other added not funness to it in that it forcibly changes them. They cannot change back on their own. However, after an indeterminate amount of time, they are changed back in the middle of the woods, not really sure where they are, and they both have to find their way back and also deal with the internal turmoil of wondering what's going to happen when they get back and wondering what kind of fallout there's going to be. Will they be considered Wolven, which is this world's rogue werewolf gone feral aspect? Or will they be a danger to people? Or a lot of the same turmoil that Sophie especially had in the first book. And at first I was like, I have no idea where this is going. And I don't know how to explain this without getting too spoilery, because, as I mentioned before, there is a sudden left turn and a new threat and a bunch of new characters is introduced. Now, in the written review, especially the one I put on Amazon, I believe I titled it a side quest, but a fun one, because a large portion of this plot does feel like a video game side quest. While the first 50 or so pages deals with the fallout directly from the end of the first book, the new threat introduced in this book and all the new characters feel strangely temporary, I think, is how I want to phrase that. In that, the new threat that is introduced has nothing to do with the big threat of the previous one. It is not a continuation of the conspiracy against Sophie or the cruel laws that lead people infected with lycanthropy to be treated so terribly. I mean, those ideas are kind of brought in that they exist everywhere for werewolves in this world, so they're naturally going to come up, but it is not a direct continuation of that plot and those themes and that threat. It is a totally new, separate threat. There are new werewolves involved, and the biggest reason that I would call this a side quest, and again, trying not to be spoilery here, the ending does not undo anything, but it kind of, in a way, almost goes back in that the very, very, very end of the book, which has a nice, lovely cliffhanger. Obviously, this is a series. Things aren't going to be wrapped up nicely in the second book when you know there's a third already out, and I believe 2 more coming next year. You can kind of see how it wasn't pointless of a digression, but the very ending would have happened if the large chunk of dealing with the threat in this book had not. The very end of this book is still leads on from the very end of the first book, and a large portion of the plot in this one did not affect that in any way. It wasn't like, oh, because this happened in the second book, the very end of the second book does this. No, it's still very much directly after the first one, hence why I feel like this is a little bit side questy as opposed to the main storyline, if I may use video game terminology. That being said, that does not mean that this story did not add anything to the world. There were a lot of realizations, and again, I don't want to spoil things, but suffice to say that there are a lot of things that are uncovered about werewolves in general, how the virus is spread, how the wolves act, and also about Corbin specifically. In the first book, they talk about his eyes and how his eyes are very strange compared to other werewolves, because while other werewolves might have their eyes turn like slightly like yellowy and wolf-like near the full moon or during the full moon, they'll go back to normal for the few weeks after, whereas Corbin's eyes are always that yellow wolfy full moon aspect, and they can't really figure out why. And I'm not going to reveal why, but they do address that, and they do start to uncover certain aspects of his special abilities. Now, I did like that it wasn't like he was the super special, ultimate special werewolf boy. Part of the reason that he figures things out about his own abilities is because there are other characters that also have the weird eye thing, and they start like comparing notes and figuring out. Now, there are a bunch of new characters introduced, both as part of the threat and as part of the addressing of the threat, and as far as I can tell, I don't think a lot of the characters, how do I phrase this, are going to be super important, at least in the beginning of the next book. A lot of them, for one reason or another, are not going to readily be around moving forward, which again lends itself to this feels like a side quest. And there were just a lot of them introduced. Judging off the top of my head, judging by all the ones Sophie met in her point of view chapters and the ones Corbin met in his point of view chapters, I want to say close to a dozen new characters were introduced. But again, this new threat was not even introduced until 50 pages in, and the entire book is give or take around 200. So that's about 150 pages for a dozen new characters to be introduced. And as a result, only a couple of them seem to like really stand out as, okay, this is the people that we need to focus on, and the rest kind of just felt like extras. And I don't know necessarily that's a fault of the writer. I don't think you could really develop that many characters in that short of time anyway. But the new characters did highlight a slight issue in the writing that I did not either have or feel before now, which is the dialogue felt strangely formal. And the reason that it did not become a thing until this book was previously everyone in the series, more or less, was someone from a place where you would believe that this is an educated person. You have RJ, who is a teacher, and Corbin, who you get the gist is one of those kids where, like, yeah, he grew up impoverished, but he still worked really hard in school. And of course you have Sophie, the billionaire's wife, and all of the, like, the really rich, wealthy set that of course are going to be highly educated. So the way they spoke made sense. But in this one, you have, like, hillbilly rednecks that didn't like school and dropped out, and you have a biker gang, and you have a lot more people who you would expect a different form of dialogue, but they still spoke in largely the same way as all of the other characters, which made these redneck hillbillies not quite as redneck hillbilly as they maybe needed to be, because I have lived in rural Pennsylvania, and those people have a specific way of speaking, I will tell you that now. So that kind of brought it up, and it also might have been the fact that I listened to the first book on audiobook wholly. I literally arranged for an entire weekend of deep cleaning my house. I even vlogged it. I will put that video as well as the first review down in the description below. But this time I just could not find enough things that I needed to do in my house at the right times where I could focus on an audiobook to do it. So I only listened to a little bit of this audiobook to make sure that, yes, Torian is still doing great, babe, and then read the rest of it because I read a lot faster than an audiobook will read to me. And yes, I know that you can speed up audiobooks and do it at like 1.5 or 2 times speed, but like that ruins it. Like, I never want to feel like I'm forcing myself to get through the audiobook. And again, Torian's voice is fantastic. I was bummed RJ is only in this book a little bit because RJ is like one of my favorite voices he does. It was next, and also I missed him saying Lobo in Alex's voice. That was also very much missed. But again, I need to go back and listen to certain chapters because A, I want to hear how he does the British dude's voice, and B, there is a teenage girl. And well, I get it. This is a fully grown black man with a nice deep voice trying to voice, in the last book especially, a very girly Valley Girl, white girl character. So you could always tell that he was doing his best, but there was always a little bit of Uncanny Valley in that for me. And so I want to see how he takes the teenage girl in this one. But for the most part, it was very well done. The writing style outside of the dialogue, specifically the descriptions of these beautiful woods that they are in, is incredibly well done and is like almost written for his voice, to be honest. It was very scenic. I mean, I always have a big imagination, but I could like see what he was describing in my head in very crystal clear ways. I think the description of the lake with the pier was particularly one of my favorites. But like I mentioned before, the dialogue, when it was read through Torian's voice, I didn't necessarily notice that it was a little bit too formalized for some of these characters. Some of them should have had a gruffer, less formal way of speaking just by nature of their backgrounds, which I've noticed tends to be a problem in a lot of books in general, not even just indie books. Writers that want to write grammatically correct, even in instances where these characters would not speak grammatically correct. But beyond that, that was really only my big issue with the writing style. I did not mind that this book was very much a side quest in comparison to the previous book. Like I mentioned before, it offered a lot of new ideas and realizations about the state of werewolves, and there were a lot of growth in character arcs, specifically in Sophie and Corbin's relationship. Now, depending on the kind of background you have, it may bug you to no end that Sophie and Corbin are having a full relationship while Sophie is still technically married to Lucas. Now Lucas did cheat, and that became a whole huge thing, and Sophie is so obviously going to divorce him at some point, or at least doesn't want to be with him. However, she is still technically married, still referred to by some characters as the billionaire's wife, so that's kind of, I think, a taste thing at this point on whether or not you're like, you know what, he's an ass, it's fine, or no, she should be divorced first. That's kind of all up in the air. For my part, I was not expecting an on-page sex scene, so I'm just chilling, doing the dishes while listening to the audiobook, and then suddenly I realized, oh no, they're doing this. Which is a weird feeling because I don't listen to audiobooks a lot, and so I've never listened to an audiobook with a sex scene. And to his credit, Torian gets through it and seems to be very serious about it. It doesn't seem like there's any discomfort on his end. I don't know that I can always listen to sex scenes in audiobooks, but if you are the kind of person that doesn't like that, be aware there's only one in the beginning, and after a certain point, you can move forward without issue. And if you are the kind of person that actually really enjoys sex scenes in audiobooks, let me know why. Make that your comment for winning the giveaway if you're doing that, because I would love to know. Regardless, I really enjoyed the book. I really appreciated the end cliffhanger. I feel like it went there. I feel like it... How much can I say without spoiling? I feel like it really validated certain aspects that had been brought up before. It did not come out of left field. People had talked about, oh, this thing might happen, and therefore it wasn't like, what in the hell? No, like, yeah, they were talking about it like they were nervous about certain things, so it made a lot of sense. Regardless, I gave this book 4 stars. The dialogue thing is a personal pet peeve of mine, and it wasn't as much, oh my gosh, yay. But I am excited to move forward. I will be continuing with the series. Infected Moonlight is already out. Let's hope it doesn't take me another 10 months to get to that, but I make no promises. So, moving forward, I am still closed for right now. I hope to make the month of November the month of getting review books read. All in all, I'm really excited I got to read this book and continue this series, and I hope to do it some more in the future. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.